Why do you think people go in the direction of lead engineer?
Sometimes it's ego. And one of the first things I write in my book is, mentors, you are more of a career therapist, right? If companies don't hire junior devs, how will junior devs ever be senior devs or leads? No is a full sentence. You don't have to say anything else. That is a terrible approach to being a lead.
For everybody just hearing this on Spotify rather than watching on YouTube, hint, Shelley has a really cool backdrop. What is this thing above the bookshelf there?
That is a prop from Horizon Zero Dawn. It's a game about a redheaded heroine. And so I was like, I have red hair. She has red hair. I feel a kinship with her. And I actually won it off of a contest on YouTube. So yeah, it's a prized possession. I love it.
Prominent way of being displayed there. You talk a lot about lead developer and your developer experience manager yourself. And in your book, you mention your own mistakes and your own journey a little bit. So maybe the best place to start talking about lead developer is to ask about the pros and cons. What's the best and the worst thing, in your opinion, about being a lead developer?
The best thing is when you have a project that's got really clean code, the architecture is just awesome, and it takes a whole team, and the pride is really a great feeling. On the other hand, it is a lot of responsibility. You are responsible for making sure everything's up and running all of the time. Handling deployments can be daunting, but if you learn how to delegate responsibilities, which is something that I talk about in the book because I had problems with that. I'm a control freak, so sometimes it was hard to pass off tasks to someone else. But yeah, it's a lot of responsibility, and it's also rewarding as well.
So what's the difference between lead engineer, staff engineer, and team leader?
The lead engineer handles estimates and talking to clients and stakeholders, project managers, making sure that everything is planned out. And you have to manage the dreaded technical debt as well, or try to avoid it altogether. That's another thing I talk about in the book. And then a staff engineer is basically handed tasks like search and is responsible for ensuring that their code matches the requirements and testing, whereas a lead also mentors. A staff engineer, especially a junior, is not expected to mentor at all. Now, a senior engineer should have started mentoring to prepare for the lead role if it's applicable to the person's personality, skills, all that kind of stuff. The engineering manager is generally the person who hires people and fires people. Unfortunately, they are the person that has enough technical skills to lead a technical team, but might not code or have previously had coding experience, but haven't coded in a while.
Sure. So as you describing that, I think it gets a little murky in my head. I definitely have seen people who might have been doing both lead engineer the way you describe it and also staff engineer in many ways. And I think it probably depends on the size of the company and the culture and all of that. But I think the distinction you're making about focusing on people versus focusing on basically managing the requirements from people is an interesting one. So let's focus on the lead engineer because, hey, you happen to have written a book about that. Can you describe, just to follow that train of thought, what a regular day for a lead engineer would be like? What it's actually day to day, other than the high level description that you just gave?
In my experience, my day was half meetings, half planning/coding. I've always had jobs where I was expected to be the lead and also a staff engineer, and I would have to argue, don't have time to be a lead if I'm trying to write actual code. As a lead, it is very important to be comfortable with people. A lot of technical people aren't so comfortable initially. I would spend time speaking to project managers mainly and having a relationship and making sure that people are comfortable coming to me and asking questions. It's really a lot of answering questions, actually, now that I think about it.
So you've been doing this for a while, and you obviously have a wealth of experience with that. But if you were to pick one thing that you're particularly proud of as a lead engineer, maybe a story that you feel was a great success, would you be happy to share that with us?
Absolutely. In 2020, I was the lead dev on the Johns Hopkins site, which is a hospital that is very large. It's global.
Yeah.
And so when COVID hit, we started to get a lot of traffic. We started to get 1 million hits per day, and we were built for 5 million a month. So we were in no position to handle that much traffic. It was a lot of work, a lot of late nights, and I will say their team was fabulous. They worked so hard to put out articles explaining symptoms and treatments, and yeah, it went to a place where we were wondering if the servers were smoking. We had to scale up really quickly. And the problem with that was that they were on-prem, meaning that they actually had a physical server. And I worked with their team to add more, and then the whole pipeline needed to be included, and it was a lot. The first deployment that we did to those servers was manual. It wasn't done in like the Azure tools. We literally just copied all the files and configs manually to the server. And I always think about if we had Docker at the time and just had containers, we literally would have just added 2 containers to the deployment, and that would have been that. No 14-hour setting up a server and all of the stress of making sure the site stays up while all that is happening. But again, I had a great team and we got to know each other really well. It's like when soldiers just meet and have that kinship. I still talk to almost everyone on that team, and we actually earned a prestigious award as well. So it was a very rewarding occurrence, but then it was also just really hard at the time. But again, like if I had delegated more responsibilities to other people, maybe I wouldn't have been so stressed out. But at the same time, it was COVID. It was an untenable situation. Yeah, it was hard, but good.
So were you responsible for figuring out how to do it? Basically scale up from, was it 5 hits a month to 30 million a month?
Yeah, I had to plan everything. I was a combination of a lead engineer, lead architect, and staff engineer at the time. It was a very small agency, and yeah, that was my role if I had been able to split out that role into the architect and stuff. So yeah, I literally helped stand up the servers and connect everything together and make sure that the code on every server was the same as well. And then I had to learn Azure DevOps at the time because I wasn't really up on that skill. It was a lot, but handled well, I think.
Yeah, plus the added benefit of feeling good, helping people get informed in
Yeah.
scary and uncertain times.
Exactly. It was so important to all of us to provide accurate information because there was so much misinformation everywhere. And I was proud to have a team of experts who wrote all that content.
Shelley, why do you think people do that job? You mentioned a few things, talking to people, a lot of meetings. A lot of people who go into tech, they really like tech. And then they kind of branch out, right? Some of them branch more into the staff engineer thing to not talk to people as much. Some of them will branch into the lead engineer. Some of them will branch into maybe a manager and I guess trade a little bit of their technical cutting edge for more people skills and all of that. But specifically for the lead engineer, why do you think people go in the direction of lead engineer?
Sometimes it's ego. And one of the first things I write in my book is if you are interested in this position to impress people, your parents, right? That is not a good place to start because you wouldn't understand what's really your job. Most people who take on the lead job are incredibly technical first. Obviously, you have to have that technical expertise to start, but then learning the people skills, that's down to personality traits. If a person likes to support people, likes to mentor, then this position of lead is a perfect fit. People who love to put on headphones, listen to music, and just churn out code, that type of person really wouldn't be happy because they would not be as responsible for coding anymore. Even me, who I was expected to wear a whole lot of hats, so I still had time to code as well. But yeah, I think that people look at the lead position as a career promotion, and it is. But if you look at it as I am the leader, what I say goes, no, not for you.
I'm glad you mentioned the headphones because in some of my mentoring, I used to call this the headphone tests. And then if you are more comfortable putting them on and really trying to solve a problem and really make a dent in what you're working on, if you go the people route, you're going to have to be taking them off very often. And not everybody likes that. But to address like the elephant in the room, isn't that the case that a lot of the cultures that people land in, they do see this as some kind of upwards mobility / career trajectory / promotion, really? So it's not just vanity, it's also seen as progression in a lot of places, which kind of makes the choice for people to a certain extent. Do you agree with that sentiment?
People a lot of the times need a goal. If you are a person who is very ambitious, then you have to have that career trajectory. But if you are a person who's comfortable where you are, I say that is completely fine. Absolutely. Not everyone moves up, right? And I've known plenty of people who were just comfortable coding and that's that. And that is perfectly fine. in the past, I thought that was the worst thing that someone could do and all of that. But then I realized not everyone's like me. So that's important to know as well.
Yeah. I think that's a big problem with the staff engineer role is that we need those people. Every company
We do.
wants to have those people. But then at the same time, there is either a pretty well-known secret that if you want to earn more money, you have to go and manage some people, write teams, or do things like that.
Right.
Or a few places I know actually make an effort to say that, no, listen, this doesn't really matter. Whichever way you go, your career can be equally amazing. But it's definitely not the standard. So I think there's a long way to go for the staff engineer role to be more cemented and more appreciated, because a lot of places run on these people and they don't appreciate them as much as they should.
Exactly. Yeah. And I also say hire junior devs. If companies don't hire junior devs, how will junior devs ever be senior devs or leads or anything like that? There's this whole culture of companies saying that junior devs are too hard to work with or too hard to train. That sounds like a you problem. That's not the junior dev. That's on you to lead and understand that they are still learning and it is your job to teach them. And mistakes are made and you learn so much more from mistakes than success, actually. So it's all a part of leading a team of people at all levels and ensuring everyone is up to speed on everything.
Oh man, that's another crazy can of worms you just opened there about the recruitment in tech. It can be very broken sometimes. That reminds me of that
Absolutely.
meme. I'm forgetting which JavaScript framework it was, but a guy didn't get an interview because they required 5 years experience with a JavaScript framework. And he just happened to actually have written it, and it was only 3 years ago, so he wasn't eligible. I'm not
That
sure.
happens all the time.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that one necessarily is 100% true, but I think it really captures the sentiment. And some of that is just crazy when you're describing multiple jobs as one, and it can be physically impossible. But maybe let's not go down that route. Back to your lead engineer. You describe the motivations why you think people should be doing that and who should be going there. How do you think people sabotage their career as a lead engineer? What's the worst thing that they can do for their lead engineer career?
I think one of the worst things that a lead can do is not really lead. Yeah. If you are not speaking to people or if people are afraid to speak to you, this is another thing that happens all the time. I see it all the time. Why would any project manager accept a lead who they were afraid to talk to? I've actually seen this happen in practice, and I come in and I'm just like, oh no, you need to be more easy to talk to, not seem angry that someone's coming to ask you a question or making people feel stupid. Because in tech, everyone is in tech. If you're at a tech company or an agency, right? Like you're in tech, no matter if you code or not, right? Leads have to understand how to speak to non-coders and not assume that they know absolutely nothing, because they do have jobs where they have to know specific terms or processes. And if they have a question, then you speak to them in a professional manner and not, you don't know what this is. What's wrong with you? That is a terrible approach to being a lead. And the other thing I wanted to touch on, because I am currently struggling myself, is imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody has imposter syndrome. It's probably the number one thing that I talk to mentees on. And it is something that can hold you back. And I'm saying these things when I literally had a conversation with my manager at Docker Monday about this because I am having such imposter syndrome working there because everybody's so smart and just with it. And I've unfortunately never had this experience before where I feel stupid like all the time. And they remind me that number one, you shouldn't compare yourself to other people. That's just not the way to go. And you should remember your successes because if you always have your failures in your head, then your inner critic will take you down and cause you to make poor decisions or try to act like you understand something when you don't. So it is very important to understand that imposter syndrome is something that impacts everyone, right? So you are not alone and you are probably not an imposter because you have a job that you had to apply for and interview for. So it's a hard thing to overcome, but it's important to not allow it to hold you back.
100% agree. If somebody says that they've never experienced that, I get very suspicious because either they're
Yeah.
lying to me or they're just not smart enough to realize that they don't know enough about things because you're always finding yourself in situations. I know, for example, for me, I've had a massive problem with imposter syndrome when I started speaking at conferences. I was thinking, wow,
Yes.
all these people, and potentially every one of them knows things I don't. And why should they listen to me? And what am I doing here? And who even let me in? But then you go and you
Yes.
do it, and it's like, it's one of those things that are very simple, but also very hard, right? Because if you go on LinkedIn, I don't know if your LinkedIn looks like mine, but as I scroll through the feed, it's basically 50-50 motivational quotes and great life advice and career advice. And then there is the other half that basically says, oh, look, I raised this much for my company, or I just achieved this and I got promoted. And it gives you this idea that everybody's doing so well. When in reality, you're just looking at their best snapshot of their achievements and stuff. So it's this kind of weird
Exactly.
schizophrenic state where on one hand, you've got all this advice to help you, and the advice is usually very simple. You just need to remember about it. And on the other hand, you get all this stimuli about how everybody's doing, the best, and you might not be. And it fuels that imposter syndrome for sure. So I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah. And you have to remember that people only post the good stuff on social media. People don't post, I'm having anxiety today, or I have a presentation and I'm freaking out about it. So I try to post as much of that as possible because I don't want people to think I'm perfect. I'm a Pluralsight author. I'm on LinkedIn learning too, and I've written a book, but then I also have anxiety and I struggle a lot. It's important to take social media with a grain of salt.
For anybody who actually clicked to listen to our conversation, my assumption is going to be that they are at least vaguely interested in becoming the lead developer kind of person, be that for the good reasons or the bad reasons. And you happen to have written a book about that. Can you talk us a little bit more about learning the lead developer skills? In your book, you're talking about your leadership styles and presentation skills and stuff like that. Obviously, you still need the technical skills and all of this.
Right.
Can you give us a short intro to how you should be learning the skills that you need for the
Yeah.
lead dev role?
So I would say if you can start to learn these skills prior to getting thrown into the lead role, it helps. Things like speaking to clients, making sure that you aren't speaking too technical, and making sure that you are comfortable speaking to clients, and having a relationship. You have got to forge relationships because that'll make your job so much easier if an entire team of people helps you, and if you ask questions and ensure that the technical requirements match the business goals as well. That is a skill that can be hard to master. And then also, a lot of clients who are technical, they'll try to tell you exactly what to do. And you have to be diplomatic in telling them that's an approach for sure, but this other approach might help you, etc. Yeah, that's probably one of the hardest skills to actually tell clients that their ideas have a good intention, but maybe the actual technical implementation just isn't right. But yeah, a lot of leading is just people. You have to know how to talk to clients, project managers, and staff as well. So making sure that you listen, that you actively participate in conversations, and make sure that your team has the skills and the tools needed to be productive as well. Managing technical debt is probably one of the hardest things about being a lead, is just looking at that list of technical debt grow and then telling the team you have to stop and you have to fix something before continuing, because if you don't, it'll create more and more technical debt. So yeah, it's a lot of planning, a lot of people, mentoring. Yeah.
Interesting. I always found that addressing technical debt for a deeply technical team comes almost as a pleasure. A lot of the time, they were so keen because they were so tired of the technical debt that was accumulated. And the real challenge wasn't really to tell them, oh yeah, we need to do that before we move forward. It was getting the buy-in from whoever is paying the salaries to spend the time to go back. Because obviously you have to strike balance between new features and delivering on things, and at the same time realize that, okay, it's like tires on your car, right? If we let them go too worn out, it can be a crash and it's dangerous. So it's better to go and spend some extra money to replace them. The human aspect that you just described, it also expand to I think in the book you call it presentation skills, but I think I would maybe expand that more generically to basically sales. Whether you're selling the content of your presentation or whether you're selling an idea to somebody. This is something that I've seen a lot of people struggle, especially very technical people, because they know reason A, B, and C why this idea is superior to that idea, but they often have really terrible time actually selling that. Have you seen that? Is that a problem that you face also?
Absolutely. When I started out, I often felt like I couldn't tell people no. No is a full sentence. You don't have to say anything else, but it's important for leads to understand that their technical expertise is valid. They wouldn't be a lead if they didn't know technical architecture and all of the principles. And yeah, it is incredibly hard to learn to make sure that you are presenting your case. And it takes that kind of confidence too. And again, you can't feel imposter syndrome. You have to be just confident and not say, I have this approach. It might be good. Let's talk about it. I'm just like, no, have an approach. Let's talk about it. Stop the passive language. And that to me was also very hard to just remain confident and explain the approach in a technical enough way, but not too much in the weeds, right?
For sure. Anything else that is required for the lead engineer job that you would like to bring to our audience's mind?
Yeah, actually, I haven't touched too much on mentoring, but that is very important. I've mentored hundreds of people, honestly. I couldn't tell you all their names, right? But I generally answer the same types of questions over and over, questions about career trajectory or important skills to learn, but you have to be comfortable providing advice, but then also telling the person, this is my experience, right? Yours might be completely different. All I can tell you is how I've handled stuff. And mentoring isn't as much about teaching skills or training, right? A lot of people confuse that. And it is important to provide mentees with the resources for training, like my book.
Yeah, as I was reading your book, I found it quite interesting that you made the distinction between a mentor and a trainer. I think for a lot of people, these are effectively interchangeable terms. But you did make that distinction in your book. Can you tell us why?
Yeah. So I think that mentors, you are more of a career therapist, right? You are answering questions about maybe a incident at work or helping people understand their role and path as well. A trainer takes a lot more time to provide lessons and provide sample code and stuff like that. As a mentor, you can answer questions, but you aren't really expected to provide concrete training. And I think the reason is because that's two skill sets, actually. Sometimes the lead wouldn't have maybe current skills or hadn't had time to learn yet. So that is a important thing. Obviously, as a lead, your skills have to stay current, but sometimes you just don't have the time to study or implement skills on the job. Mentors, I think, are more expected to provide training resources like online courses or books, podcasts, stuff like that.
And I think that's not to say that the same person can't jump into mentor's shoes and on occasion trainer's shoes as well, depending on what's needed. It's not necessarily a distinction that has to be like always like that, right?
Not always, yeah. I think for me personally, because I do have training experience, I actually have the skills to train. But I think that the issue that prevents me from training mentees is just time, because I don't always have time to customize training for each person, or it takes time to outline as well. But I have definitely taught training a lot in my career.
For sure. Why did you write the book?
It needed to be written. There is no resource available like this. And I struggled so much. And I could have used help, right? Most resources for tech careers talk about management, right? But a lead dev isn't management. It is a very specific skill set that you have to have in order to be successful. I wrote topics on everything I struggled with, and I had reviewers, editors who agreed that why doesn't this exist? It's a important topic, especially for people who are interested in leadership on a technical level, because you are expected to be extremely technical and then also have those people skills as well. And the first time I led, I failed so much. But like I said, you learn so much from failure. But I noticed that everything I was experiencing, others also struggle as well. And as a trainer, as a mentor, speaker, my ultimate goal is to help people not struggle as I have. So it's why I teach, and I just love to help people, honestly. And it was just a important topic to me.
It definitely was. It still is. Who should not be picking up your book?
People who are interested in leading because of ego, as we talked about earlier. And I actually state in the first chapter, I'm pretty sure, that if you are interested in leading because of prestige or ego, then that just isn't a good approach. Now, if people who are looking at it as a promotion, if they are in a place to grow personally, then that is perfect. Then I commend those people. And then also, who it's actually for is anyone from junior to senior. If you're a lead already and struggling, or just want to know how to improve, then this is for you.
So the book is available already, right? Or is it still in the early access?
Yes, it is still in early access. You can pre-order it on Amazon, but I believe it should be printed and out in stores or whatever in October.
You can go to manning.com and search for lead developer.
Yes.
And the early access, it's called MEEP, Manning Early
MEEP.
Access Program, I think.
Yes, yeah.
And you can actually see some of the book before you buy it, and then you can read it immediately online. You don't have to wait for Amazon to deliver a physical copy. Plug.
Exactly.
Finished. Yep. There's one more thing that I wanted to ask you to finish the episode, and that's Hofstech. I think I find it very unique that a husband and wife working together, and this way you spend even more time together. Tell us about this project. How did it come to be? How did you find it? Would you recommend it to other people?
Yeah, I started Hofstech to handle my Pluralsight contracts. I have produced more than 20 courses, and my husband edited them all. So not only do we spend a lot of time together, but then he sees my face and hears my voice quite a bit. So kudos to him for wanting to do this in the first place, but it helped us grow pretty quickly.
Shelley, thank you very much. This has been really interesting. I'm very glad that someone went ahead and wrote a book about that, because before that, like you said, it was all tribal knowledge, and a lot of people, I assume, went into that just because they figured, I have to do that. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and I'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.